Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to All Era Sports with Sirhan live on the X platform. As I'm coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America on the 7th of January, 2026. And I was hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful day today and a wonderful week coming up. Lots to get to here tonight. Wild card weekend, a historical night for the great Joe Montana, and an early preview of what could be a mismatch. But is it going to be a mismatch? That's something I'll probably touch on. And the historical run of one of the premier all-time greats as he just took care of business rather early in a historical night. Of course, it is wild card weekend. Going to pick the games respectively. Lots to get to with these. Not an interesting thing is there's no real clear-cut favorites on a lot of these. I mean, on paper, there's no real I don't even know who the real favorites are, not just in these games, but in these playoffs, because we've always had the upper teams that you knew who was going to be the favorites. So picking these is going to be a bit of a challenge because I don't know who the clear-cut favorites are. I'm just going to throw my name in the hat. Let's see what goes with us. It's, of course, tomorrow, Saturday. It's the Rams and the Panthers. It's a rematch of a game that the Panthers stunned the Rams in earlier this season. So said the Rams defense sort of took a bit of a turn the last several weeks, giving up some big plays uncharacteristically against a Carolina team who was the NFC South default winner. But I think this time around, I think it's going to be a case of the Rams getting payback and taking care of business. And I expect them to go to Carolina and do just that. I think this is going to be a better game than something people think it's going to be a Rams beatdown. Not sure I'm going to go that far because I don't know much about how the Rams are going to be able to pick it up because their defense started to show some kinks as the season wore on because it started giving up big plays. But luckily, the Carolina offense doesn't offer enough big plays, and I think this might be a get-right game for the Rams defense, especially how Carolina looked when they beat Tampa, lost to Tampa in the season finale. So I'm going to give you the Rams. Give me them on the road, and I think they win this one pulling away late. I think the Carolina faithful will uplift their team to try to keep them in it, but the difference in talent is going to show, and the Rams have that more significantly, and that's where the Rams is going to win this particular game. And of course, in Chicago, it is the Bears and the Packers. Another chapter in their long gold standard historic rivalry. Surprising to me a little bit, the Packers are the favorites given how they backpedaled into the playoffs down the stretch, going against a Bears team that was, you probably say overachieved a little bit. We consider that the Packers and the Lions were favored to win the division. Bears were pegged to finish third or fourth, but they won it. They were winning. Ben Johnson is throwing a winning culture. You have to give him that. We're going to find out just how good this Bears team can be and will be. And going against a divisional rival like Green Bay, who had the close win earlier, and even with Malik Willis, gave Chicago everything they can handle at Soldier Field until some weird play calling down the stretch. But I think this time, the difference between last time and this time is Malik Willis versus Jordan Love. Remember, the last time when they played in Chicago, Green Bay settled for field goals deep in the red zone. And I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think Chicago is going to make this a good game and show a good account of themselves going forward. But this time, it's going to be the Packers going into that red zone and converting those field goals into touchdowns. And they're going to leave Soldier Field with the win. And basically, they're going to be playing with house money because they basically backed into the playoffs and nothing to play for down the stretch. And they're the 7th seed, and not much is expected of them. They're going to be a dangerous 7th seed, and I think they're going to stun Chicago when they go to Soldier Field Saturday night. And I think it's going to be a good one. That historic rivalry. Now, fast forward to Sunday. Game over there is Buffalo and Jacksonville. I mean, I said all along, and a lot of people said it, it's now or never for Josh Allen. We consider the big three of the other big three of the quarterbacks. We talk about Mahomes, Jackson, and Burrow out of the playoffs. But this is not a good matchup when we talk about going against the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose defense is very opportunistic and an offense that lately starting to put some points on the board. Remember, they went to Denver, the number 1 ranked defense, and hung 30 plus on them. And they're going against the 31st ranked defense in the Buffalo Bills, who's had key pieces out. And going against a physical team like Jacksonville might be what is ordered out of this. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to give them the slight nod on this because they're at home. Everybody knows I'm not the biggest, what the word to use, one that thinks Trevor Lawrence is as good as some of the other quarterbacks. But he has played better. You will have to give him that. And I think this one, because they're at home, and given Buffalo hasn't been all that great on the road either, I tend to tilt the nod to Jacksonville at home. And I think they handle this. And we're going to have answer a lot of questions about the Bills in the offseason because it's basically put up or shut up time now with every other team out. I think Buffalo is going to be ready, but I think being at home is going to be where I tilt the edge to Jacksonville. It's going to be a very darn good one, and we're going to find out just how good both these teams are moving forward. At the 4 o'clock tilt, it is the 49ers and the Eagles. Don't think it's going to be the greatest game in the world, but I don't know what the energy level is going to be like for San Francisco, knowing they had a chance to clinch the number 1 seed, now having to go down to, as a 6th seed, having to travel cross country to Philly, and that's going to be a different energy over there. Granted, the Eagles haven't played all that great. They still won the division, and the games they won, they just found ways to win. And it's going to be another case here because I don't know what the energy level is for San Francisco. They've had key injury after key injury, and the fact they got to this point speaks volumes to how good of a coaching job Kyle Shanahan has. But I expect Philadelphia to win at home, and I don't think this one is going to be close at all. So give me Philadelphia at home. And, of course, the Sunday night game, it is the Chargers and the Patriots. The Patriots are the weak link of the NFL because everybody pegs the weak schedule excuse, but it really wasn't. But they're going against the Chargers. And the last time the Chargers were in the playoffs, their star quarterback, Justin Herbert, threw 4 intentional interceptions. 2 of them were just some of the ugliest ones you'll ever see. And before that, there was that little shebang where the Chargers went to Jacksonville. It was spotted a 27-0 lead and blew it under Justin Herbert's watch. So everything that was said about Josh Allen, more needs to be said about Justin Herbert because he needs to get up and get the job done. And if he doesn't get that job done, what's his future going to look like? Because everybody puts him in the Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow category and several of the others, but he doesn't have a playoff win. And his 2 playoff losses are as ugly as you could get. What happened in Jacksonville and in Houston? These will need to show something, and they're going against a Patriots team, a defense who's going to have Milton Williams back in the defensive tackle position, which is going to be a huge game because the Patriots' run defense has sort of tilted south after he went out. So I expect him to come back and make a difference. They're going to get Will Campbell back at the left tackle position. He'll protect Drake May's backside. And we know this is the Patriots' first playoff game, but at Foxborough and that atmosphere, they're going to be the ones that makes the plays, that makes the difference. And we're going to still have another conversation about Justin Herbert as an elite quarterback because he's going to have another playoff loss coming up. So give me the Patriots at home. I'll announce this one is going to be pretty darn close. But Justin Herbert is going to have to step up and make some plays in this particular game, or his playoff resume up to this point is going to raise a lot of questions. Because everyone knows what happened last year in Houston. And, of course, when he was spotted a 27-0 lead against Jacksonville and blew it, he blows it here. We're going to have some conversations and problems in regards to Justin Herbert's stature among the top NFL quarterbacks. But the Patriots do win at home. And the nightcap, Monday night in Pittsburgh, and this is going to be a good one. The Texans and the Steelers. I mean, the Texans are the flaming hot team going in with that stout defense. And the offense has looked a little better but you're going to travel to Pittsburgh. You can say a lot of things about Pittsburgh, but that front seven started playing a little better as the season went on, and the offense has just done enough to win games. But Pittsburgh needs to do more than just enough because you're playing a defense that can put the clamps on anybody. And what D'Amico Ryans has done with this defense to get this turnaround started is something. Yes, no Kamari Lassiter. That's going to be a bit of an issue. And yes, the Steelers are getting DK Metcalf back, which is going to be a substantial help. But it's going to come down to whether that Houston offensive line can protect C.J. Stroud, which has been an issue all year long. And as the season was going on, even though they were scoring points, it started to get a little better. But still, in the playoffs, having to go to Pittsburgh, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And on this one, I'm going to go on a coin flip because this one is a tough one to pick. Just because they're at home, I'm taking the Steelers basically on a coin flip. But this one could go either way. And may the best team win on this one because I think this might be the game of the wild card weekend. Could be low scoring, clash of styles, throwback style football, to where it's a case of which defense makes the most stops or maybe forces the most turnovers. And I think it's going to be the Steelers that does it. And it's going to be a pretty darn good one Monday night over there at the Steel City. May the best teams win all 6 games this weekend. Said there's no real clear-cut favorite because all of these picks I've made probably more on pure pick just out of the sake of picking, because none of these teams moving forward actually move me as to who's going to be the real favorite. Because this might be a case of most of these teams where the weaknesses is just as high as the strengths, and that's what makes this so unpredictable. We're going to see who comes out of all of this, and if someone was to really stand out, they're going to have to do, as I said this the other night, what the Baltimore Ravens did in 2012 with Joe Flacco, just turn on the switch and stomp everybody out of nowhere, as they did as a 4 seed. That's probably what it's going to come down to for this entire NFL playoffs, because we don't have that Kansas City or a Baltimore or a team like that who we've known for years as the upper favorites, and we knew that they was going to get the job done. All of these teams coming in this playoffs, there's more question marks than answers, and we're not sure we're going to get all the answers this weekend. We'll find out. And speaking of the NFL, of course, it's a coaching carousel that continues. Now Todd Bowles stays in Tampa, much to the chagrin of Buccaneers fans. I mean, but he said he's going to make changes to his staff, which something has to happen. I mean, go from 5-1 to miss the playoffs. Changes have to be made. You go from 5-1 to miss the playoffs. That says a whole lot. And it says a whole lot about you guys. That's kind of a team at the end of the day in Tampa, because you had probably the best team in the NFC South on paper. We had that kind of a roster. Yeah, I get you had key injuries throughout the season, most notably Mike Evans, and that didn't help Baker Mayfield moving forward. But there's a lot of work to be done, and you just can't be more than good enough to win the NFC South. You better do more than that, because you already done won the NFC South before this season, and the only one you lost at this season was because of some cartoonish stipulations that took place in the final weekend between Carolina, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans. But Tampa Bay, you're closing in, do something significant or blow it up mode, because you need to do more than win the division moving forward. To go from 5-1 to miss the playoffs says a lot about who you are at the end of the day. Yes, they need changes. I think Todd Bowles is smart going about it. But it comes to a point where he needs to look at himself in the mirror, the same we had for John Harbaugh in Baltimore for the longest time. And that's where Tampa Bay needs to take a look at themselves. That's what it comes down to. And all the interviews all over the place. Browns are interviewing a boatload of coordinators, especially a guy like Jim Schwartz, who remember was a one-time head coach of the Detroit Lions, so he brings experience there. Baltimore's supposed to bring Clint Kubiak and interviewing Anthony Weaver. But I think if Baltimore were smart, they would interview and bring in Brian Flores, who would do wonders for a guy like Lamar Jackson, considering he had pretty good teams down in Miami, but nobody wanted to listen to him down there. If he goes to Baltimore, they would listen to him, and he would help them. And I think a Brian Flores of Baltimore marriage may be the match made in heaven for the Baltimore Ravens and Brian Flores. Someone needs to tell them, bring in Brian Flores for an interview and give him the job, because that might be what the doctor ordered moving forward for them. Interviews all over the place. Kevin Stefanski on an interview with the Giants. I think this guy's going to get a head coaching job quick. I believe John Harbaugh is going to get a head coaching job quick. Like I said, him and Baltimore just ran its course for the last several years. But he'll be back real quickly. And this coaching, nobody's going to fill these seats real quick, because there's some coordinators, most notably Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator in Seattle, is going to garner tons of interest. And everybody's going to wait till after Seattle's playoff run is done to see who gets him. And I have an itch. He's going to be the first shoe that drops before everybody else starts to make their move when it comes to the NFL coaching carousel. That's what I expect to happen moving forward. Yeah, I swear. I don't know what's more dramatic this year, the unpredictability of the playoffs or who's going to be coaching where, because both are just as unpredictable this season. And it's going to be a wild playoff run, and it's going to be a wild off season, because there's going to be all kinds of questions all over the place. And if you guys are ready for the league new year in March, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a wild ride. Now to what took place 35 years ago today over at Candlestick Park. It was the 1989 divisional playoff between the San Francisco 49ers and the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings came into this game with the number 1 ranked overall defense, and a defense that featured 4 standout guys. We talk about the standout Chris Dolman, one of the premier defensive edge rushers of his time. And talk about what he did in the 1989 season, leading 21 sacks out of the defensive end position. It was just terrorizing people, and it helped. You talk about the guys that played alongside him. You had a defensive tackle named Keith Millard, who had 18 sacks that year, was Defensive Player of the Year. At the time, had the most defensive sacks for a nose tackle till this fellow in L.A. named Aaron Donald broke it. And Millard was, with that 18 sacks, won the Defensive Player of the Year award. Right beside him are 2 players named Henry Thomas and Al Noga. And that defense in Minnesota had 71 sacks that led the league. And was number 1 overall, allowing just a shade over 4,000 total yards, and 6th in points allowed, only allowing 275 points. But they were going against the 1989 San Francisco 49ers, who had just won 3 Super Bowls, who changed head coaches from Bill Walsh to George Seifert after Walsh retired and Seifert took over. And the only thing the 49ers had were Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Roger Craig, and Brent Jones as their offense. And you talk about an offense that was first overall in the NFL, 442 points, first in total yards, a shade over 6,200, and second in passing yards with 4,300. And you're talking about an offense's pass efficiency who had 9 yards per play, a crazy stat. And this is before all the NFL evolved to what it's become today. You could probably say that was ahead of its time, what took place in 89 with those guys. But here's the kicker. You're talking about the 3rd ranked defense in the San Francisco 49ers, 3rd in the NFL in points allowed, 4th in total yards allowed, and they allowed 6 yards per pass attempt on their defense, and didn't allow 300-yard passing. So you had a top-ranked offense and a top 4 ranked defense going against the number 1 ranked defense in the Minnesota Vikings. And the offense, which involves Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, it's pretty much the end game right there. We talk about the 1989, the 1990, basically 1989 NFC title game, and not the 1990, because it was in 1990. We know that. But a clinic was displayed by the great Joe Montana. And we talk about this particular divisional game. they did anything and everything they wanted to. I mean, Joe Montana in the first half just went crazy on the Minnesota defense that was ranked first overall. They hung 44 on them. That's what it comes down to. I mean, talk about the. I'll get this here real quick. If I can pull it up. I apologize. Here we go. We look at this. I'm looking at the summary here. Minnesota was number one in total yards allowed for a little more 4,000. The San Francisco 49ers put up 403 yards. And Minnesota, who had 71 sacks, didn't get to Joe Montana. And Minnesota started out with an early field goal. But at that point, the 49ers just put the ball in the end zone every chance they got. And it was the big one, of course, was the first play. Montana hit Jerry Rice in stride for a 72-yarder and just basically just blew the game open. And then an 8-yard passes all over the place to Brent Jones and John Taylor. And, of course, the capper was a 58-yard interception return for a touchdown by the great Ronnie Lott. They went wire to wire, and you had a top 5 team across every major ranking you can have. And a league, and they basically curb stomped the entire NFL in 1989. And what they did to the Minnesota Vikings here, which was supposed to be the most formidable challenge at that point, the 49ers just dusted them off effortlessly. And we talk about that defensive front of Minnesota. We talk about Keith Millard and Chris Dolman and Al Noga, and not allowing a sack against those guys. Having Joe Montana just pick you apart, especially when we talk about the team hanging 27 in the first half, which the game was essentially over at that point, speaks volumes to the greatness of that San Francisco dynasty. And we talk about that team that dominated from start to finish. And we talk about what the NFL became today. You probably say that 89 team that 49ers had was ahead of its time because every play they ran offensively, same thing we have here, just they had a top 5 defense to go with it, which is something we never heard of. At that time, it was unthought of. And they were just men amongst boys, stomped the league from start to finish. I'll get to the finish here in a second. But they started and they finished and they did everything. And that's why the San Francisco 49ers has abominated Minnesota, even though Minnesota did managed to score a touchdown late to just for window dressing on a stat sheet. Even then, the 49ers were still raining parades and putting 40 plus on them to the tune of 2 more touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Big game moments, situational football game moments, the ability to rise at the biggest stage. For that time, nobody topped Joe Montana. And we talk about the team that they had in the 1980s. And he was basically the staple of it. That's why he had the distinction of the greatest quarterback of all time. Not unanimously, but widely. Of course, before we had guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Patrick Mahomes enter the conversation. But Joe Montana, at the biggest games, was able to slow the game down at his pace, play at any pace possible. And when you have the weapons like a Jerry Rice, a Brent Jones, and a John Taylor, and you know how to utilize them, that's why you're going to have the results that you did. And remember, this Minnesota Vikings defense was putting clamps on everybody, getting to the quarterback to the tune of over 70 sacks. They couldn't even get to Joe Montana. And that's why Joe Montana just had a field day on that defense and picked them apart piece by piece by piece. And those kind of big games is why they called him Joe Cool for the longest time. I mean, every single which way he won it. I mean, game-winning drive like he did in Super Bowl 23 against Cincinnati, he did it. Needed a clutch throw like he did in the 81 title game against Dallas, he did it. It was 82, can't remember what year, I apologize. But where was that game against Dallas? He did it. And if he needed to light up the stat sheet and put points on the board, he did it. And that's what he did here against the number 1 ranked defense. And the game was essentially over when Montana threw the long touchdown to Rice, and eventually when Ronnie Lott had the pick six late in the game to basically ice it. This San Francisco 49ers just won any way and every way possible, and they stopped the league from start to finish. When you talk about from beginning to end, I mean, they had one loss late in the season. That was when they had everything wrapped up. Of course, to the playoffs, not only did they get to the divisional round and stomp the Minnesota Vikings, they just demolished the LA Rams effortlessly, holding them to a field goal. And of course, we know what happened in Super Bowl 24, where Montana to Rice just absolutely shredded and destroyed the Denver Broncos to the tune of 55-10. You know, big game moments under the bright lights, when it matters most, is when we find out the greatness of certain athletes. We know this in all sports. I can point to a boatload of them. But at the NFL quarterback position, at least in the decade of the 80s, nobody was bigger and brighter under the bright lights in the big games than the great Joe Montana. And he found every which way to be great. And in this one here, he was like a surgeon, basically carving up the number one ranked defense in the NFL at the time. And because that Minnesota defense could not get to him, it allowed Montana to utilize all the weapons he had. And not to mention, in the middle of all of that, Roger Craig went wild for over 100 yards. And as all that was going on, Joe Montana just carved up the Vikings and that number one defense. And that defensive front that was getting to the quarterbacks for the Minnesota Vikings didn't even lay a hand on Joe Montana. And when you can't get to a quarterback like him, you're going to see just how great he was. And if you give him those opportunities, he's going to pick you apart. That's what he did 35 years ago at the old Candlestick Park in San Francisco, when he just destroyed the Minnesota Vikings defense. And when they hung up 41 points and just smashed the Minnesota Vikings, it roots to probably one of the more dominant runs to a Super Bowl in NFL history. Talk about a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. Good luck trying to beat that. Nobody really did. And especially into the postseason, we talk about the Vikings, the Rams, and the Broncos. And those three teams scored only a combined 24 points, while the 49ers hung 130 plus. Think about that for a minute. That's what we call dominance. And we have a quarterback like Joe Montana and the weapons that he has. And Montana knows how to use those weapons to the tune that he did, maximize their abilities, maximize their strengths, ability to see the field and know where the offense was going to be and where he was able to place the ball to allow guys like Jerry Rice to succeed. You're going to get those results. And that's why at the end of the day, they won their 4th Super Bowl of the 80s. It basically just sealed their claim as a team of the 80s in the NFL. And that was the 49er dynasty. And boy, what a way to close out the 80s if you're the San Francisco 49ers. So far up in the stratosphere, I don't even know who the second best team in the NFL was at that time, but nobody was touching the 1989 San Francisco 49ers. And it was another case of why Joe Montana place in NFL quarterback history is through the roof. I mean, it had the distinction of the greatest quarterback of all time before we saw guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Patrick Mahomes enter that conversation. Again, I don't partake due to the lack of criteria, but all 4 of them are great. Maybe I put my Mount Rushmore of NFL quarterbacks. They'd be my 4. But before them, before we saw everything that took place, Joe Montana did it all. And that's why he had the place in NFL history as secure as it is. And that's why the 49ers were the team of the decade. Yes, he had great teams around him. There's no doubt about it. I mean, some teams you could probably say more with less. But I challenge you with this. We've had stacked teams with quarterbacks who did less with those stacked teams than what Joe Montana had in the 80s. And when you're going to have a receiving core like that, and you have the ability to utilize the core that Joe Montana had, and you find a way to make them better, that's what makes him a great quarterback. And that's why he was able to have the run he had in the 80s. I mean, great teams he had. Yes, that is a no-brainer. I mean, you're talking about Jerry Rice, the goat of wide receivers, and Montana put him in that pedestal, put him to that point, that well-earned pedestal throughout the 89 season. But Jerry Rice also made Joe Montana better because Rice put Montana in positions to succeed. And that's why you could probably say, as a strong case of probably the greatest quarterback wide receiver duo in NFL history. We talk about going back to back in 88 and 89 and setting records at that time that nobody thought was going to be matched. And that's what made him great. And the cap was what took place 36 years ago at Candlestick Park when Joe Montana and Jerry Rice just put on a surgical clinic against that Minnesota defensive front who led the league in sacks and was the number one ranked defense. That offense led by Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and including Roger Craig and John Taylor, just surgically diced up and sliced up the Minnesota Vikings to the tune of 41-13. And the game, really, it wasn't even that close. I mean, the only reason why it was that close was because the second half, the 49ers defense just put the clamps on whatever Minnesota tried to do. But they could have hung 50 or 60 if they wanted to that day because Joe Montana was a man on a mission. So too was that San Francisco 49ers team who was looking to go back-to-back to seal their fate as a team of the 80s. And they did just that. A terrific, terrific run. And Joe Montana is I always call him the GOAT to me because I grew up watching that guy. And I'll admit I will be always biased to Joe Montana. But what made this guy great? Any single way he wanted to win in the 80s, he did it. I mean, that's why they called him Joe Cool. And we got it down to his tempo, his pace. If he had to turn it up, he could turn it up. If he wanted to make a clutch play, he did that. And when he did not the fact that he did it, it was under the bright lights, the biggest stages, and the biggest games where everything is on you. And that's when Joe Montana delivered in the 80s. And that's why his place in quarterback history and maybe all of NFL history and maybe in sports history is through the roof. And nobody can deny that. Plain and simple. A terrific, terrific quarterback. I still love that guy to the moon and back. Even when he talks football, you just want to listen to the guy because one of the premier brilliant football minds maybe you'll ever see in the NFL. Now that takes care of the NFL segment. Now we go to the two collegiate games coming up. Of course, it's Miami and Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss, they looked good against Georgia, but there's something buzzing going on in Miami. We talk about the defensive front led by Ruben Bain, and I expect the momentum to continue. Ole Miss, they answered everything Georgia threw at them. I'll give them that. But that last thing I expected was for a Georgia defense to just fall up to crack like it's easy to crack an egg with a hammer, and that's what Ole Miss did to Georgia. And that offense is one of the premier offenses in the nation, as we know. But I think something is cooking right now in Miami, and I think it's going to continue. And I think they're going to slow down this explosive Ole Miss offense just enough. And Carson Beck, just like he did against Ohio State, he's going to make the plays necessary to take Miami to the national championship game. And I think Miami's going to be the one to handle Ole Miss in a bit of a shocker. And in the other game, it's Indiana and Oregon. Indiana's just finding ways to win. And I know Oregon shut down Texas Tech, but I think Texas Tech overachieved this season. And they're facing a different animal. And whatever rust Indiana had going into that Alabama game, I think they just knocked it off. And I think that continues tomorrow, Friday night, when they face Oregon. And I expect Indiana to continue rolling. And I think it'll be a better than expected game. I think Oregon is going to test that defense of Indiana just somewhat. But Fernando Mendoza is going to make enough plays. And I think Indiana's defense is going to step up, slow down Oregon enough to where Mendoza is going to make the plays necessary. And Indiana will be playing Miami for the national championship. That will be your national championship game in about a week and a half on January 19th. That's good. My two picks for the college football playoff. And if Indiana pulls this off, it's going to be the greatest football story ever told from what Kurt Signetti has done to this program. Talking about from the outhouse to the penthouse, that's what he did. And now you're having in the new transfer portal, whatever the frick they want to call it, players wanting to go to Indiana now, something you thought you'd never say. That tells you the impact and the fingerprints that's Kirk Cignetti has put on there. And now the Indiana program, which was a basketball program forever, especially under Bobby Knight, you know how those years went, is now a football program, and a power is about to be built. Fasten your seatbelts. Stories like that, you live to tell 20 to 30 years from now. And that's going to be one of those, if Indiana goes all the way, you're going to live to tell about. Now to the world of boxing, and a fight. I don't know if it's official. I don't know if it's going to be official or not. The story of this one is, of course, a supposed rematch between supposed matches. I apologize, between Oleksandr Usyk and Deontay Wilder. And we have idiots who think Deontay Wilder is going to do this. Well, let me start with issue number one. Does Deontay Wilder really deserve a shot against Oleksandr Usyk? Can somebody really answer that? And I know Oleksandr Usyk wants to fight. I get it, just to clean out his era because he's on that side of his career now. And why not just end it by beating a name of that era just to wipe it out? But in hindsight, does Deontay Wilder really deserve a shot at Oleksandr Usyk, even though Usyk wants to give him the championship shot? Forget about trying to win for a second. I'll get to that in a second. Can somebody really answer if he really deserves a shot at Usyk? Because I said this before. He's fought 5 big fights in his career. 3 against Tyson Fury, Joseph Parker, and Zalil Zhang. He went 0-4-1. Really, in hindsight, he should have gone 0-5 because everybody knows that first fight, Tyson Fury gave him a boxing lesson, but because of boxing politics, it was a gift wrapped a draw for Deontay Wilder. And we know what happened in the second and the third fights. And then just had the brakes beaten off of him by both Joseph Parker and Zalil Zhang in those 5 fights. I mean, he's been in 5 real fights. He's 0-4-1 when he should have been 0-5. And we have people crazy enough to think he's going to have a shot to beat Oleksandr Usyk. If he's not beating Joseph Parker, Zalil Zhang, and he couldn't do much to Tyson Fury in the that 3-fight series, ain't no way he's beating Oleksandr Usyk. And we have people crazy enough to think Deontay Wilder has a shot against Oleksandr Usyk. If you legitimately think Deontay Wilder has a shot to beat Oleksandr Usyk, I encourage all you guys to simply shut up. I encourage all you guys to get off the social media apps because you reveal your cowardice of those apps. I encourage you guys to go to a local hospital in your parts of the U.S. or the States. Then I encourage you guys to go into the emergency room and then get an immediate check-in and say you need check for CTE. And if they ask why, you just tell them, I'm stupid enough to think Deontay Wilder is going to beat Oleksandr Usyk. Make sure you get checked in. Go to one of those CTE CAT scans for your brains. Get checked for the CTE. Sign off all the waiver forms so you can have the results come released. And you're more than welcome to put my name, and I'll give you my contact information so you can have the CTE results sent to me so I can see what's wrong with you. If you legitimately think Deontay Wilder has a chance to beat Oleksandr Usyk. That's the conclusion I could come up with. I'm going to come up with some more things, but the platforms will probably ban me for what I would have to say to you. Because Deontay Wilder, he's had 40-plus wins over, I'll try to use this word lightly, fake fighters. And when he fought real fighters, he's 0-4-1. And he really should have been 0-5. And there's nothing fake about Oleksandr Usyk. He's the number 1 fighter pound for pound. And if you guys can do the math on that one, you might need to go back. You might need to re-register yourself to elementary school to learn basic math. Because Deontay Wilder fans and math don't go hand in hand like bread and butter. They might need to register to preschool to learn basic math. Because I don't think they can comprehend what's about to happen to Deontay Wilder if he manages to step in the ring with Oleksandr Usyk. I mean, we might be seeing Oleksandr Usyk on the on these most wanted lists for all this federal agent baloney we have going on in the globe today after what he's going to do to Deontay Wilder, because it's going to be that bad. Because the last time Deontay Wilder was relevant, he got spun around like a top and then put on the canvas by Zalil Zhang, and he hasn't done anything since. And the guy has been irrelevant, and I get why Oleksandr Usyk wants this fight to basically beat all the names of his era. I get it. I mean, I don't have anything wrong with it because he's accomplished everything he wanted to. But from the Deontay Wilder angle, has he really been relevant outside of winning a fake heavyweight championship and making fake title defenses and then stepping up against real fighters and just getting wiped out and bum rushed? It's not the fact he lost those fights. In those fights, I couldn't even count 5 rounds total and all of the losses and that draw to Fury that he won altogether. That's how one-sided his losses are. And it's going to, and that this has going to be as much of a one-sided fight against Wilder if he goes through with it. And if that's the case, what is Deontay Wilder at the end of the day? I mean, if the guy said this guy has a punch, how come he knocked out a legitimate heavyweight contender? And how come in the first of the 2 fights was Bermane Stiverne able to go the distance? I mean, if he had this kind of a punch like Deontay Wilder fans say he has, how come I haven't seen him knock out a relevant, real opponent? Because when he went 0-4-1 against real opponents, and he floored Tyson Fury 4 times but couldn't finish him, where's that power? And what's he going to do against Oleksandr Usyk? Because the guy hasn't had a real punch on any opponent, or I should say any real opponent, in quite some time. Good luck trying to tell me that Deontay Wilder, A, deserves a title shot against Oleksandr Usyk, and B, that you're stupid enough and you're ignorant enough to think Deontay Wilder has any kind of a puncher's chance. I haven't seen him throw a real punch against a real opponent in quite some time. And the last time the real punch, it was the first Tyson Fury fight where Fury just got up like the Undertaker. That should tell you the power of Deontay Wilder at the end of the day. And he's not going to touch Oleksandr Usyk. He'll make damn sure of it. And don't blink, it'll be that quick. So all the Deontay Wilder fans can just beginning the process of going to the emergency room and signing in for a CTE check. And make sure you tell them it's because you're stupid enough to think Deontay Wilder is going to beat Oleksandr Usyk. And put my name down. I want to see the results. So you can release those medical records to me so I can see what's wrong with you to think Deontay Wilder would beat Oleksandr Usyk or has a chance. They make things too easy for me like that sometimes. Personally, I don't know if the fight's really going to take place. I know Oleksandr Usyk said it. I know why he wants to do it. But I'd be surprised if that fight goes through, because it's a case of nothing to gain. And you probably say, I don't say a lot to lose, but he would have something to lose if something off the chain miraculous happens. But I'm not going to go that far, because I'd be surprised if this fight happens. Because there's nothing to gain for Oleksandr Usyk in a fight like this. I said, if I were him, I would just retire right now because he has nothing left to prove. I mean, if he wants to fight Fabio Wardley, have at it. The other opponent probably is Ajib Kayabel, but we know Kayabel is too busy ducking other fighters right now. So you can forget about that one. Now I conclude with the historical night that took place over 84 years ago tonight at Madison Square Garden, in the middle of one of probably the longest reign and probably the greatest reign in boxing history. This is the night that Joe Louis had a rematch with Buddy Baer and basically just took care of business without even blinking. And we talk about this night that took place. It was a rematch of a fight in the first of the 2 fights where Joe Louis got a disqualification win in a fight where the referee told Buddy Baer's corner to leave so they could go on to round 7, but Buddy Baer's trainers are still going after the referees for what he thought was an illegal punch, and Joe Louis was awarded a disqualification win. So basically what happens here, they get the rematch, and the story of this one here was not even much to talk about. Joe Louis said, heck with a controversy. I'm going to blast this guy out in 1 round, and that's what he did. I mean, this was every bit the blasting. What he did to Buddy Baer is what he did to Max Schmeling 3.5 years earlier. And we know all the things that went on with these, the social nepotism with this second Schmeling fight. And Joe Louis said with this rematch, I don't care about any disqualification. Nobody's going to get involved. I'm just going to wipe him out. And that's what he did. And the fight was over not in less than 2 minutes. And Joe Louis would have beat him so bad in that one round, Buddy Baer retired. That's I tell you what Joe Louis was made of when he just get in that ring, beat down Buddy Baer, and party was over. That's what it was. And we talk about Joe Louis in this rematch. He fought this for free. He fought this for free, donating his $47,000 fight purse to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. And after that was when he put himself in the middle of World War II, which this was his last fight before then. Tells you about the humanitarian that Joe Louis was and how America betrayed him. But I won't go too deep into that because of the political angle, and I won't use my platform for it. But just want to touch that out there. So a lot of fight fans, followers, I follow back and vice versa, have a Marine background. And there's what Joe Louis meant. And so basically, he just ended Buddy Baer's career for free when you think about it. But we talk about the reign of Joe Louis. And I know fighters have had broke his records in terms of title defenses. I know Chavez did. Naoya Inoue recently did. And a couple of others in there, I can't think of it. But they did it in multiple divisions when you can just get belts all over the place. Joe Louis, 12 years, 25 successful title defenses in one weight class with one belt. When one belt was winner take all, that's the record. That stands more than anything anybody else does. And we consider the era he came in. And when you consider that in the middle of it, he was in the middle of all of the military stuff he had going on. For him to do that, have the reign he had, and to do it in one weight class, that should tell you what the record meant. And that was at a time when undisputed heavyweight champion was the prize in all of sports. Not just in all of boxing, all of sports. This is before, of course, we had the NBA title. We had before the Super Bowl and all the other stuff. One belt, one era, one weight class, winner takes all. 25 successful times they tried to take it from Joe Louis. Joe Louis didn't allow that to happen. The only reason he lost the title is because he retired after the second Walcott fight and was forced to vacate the title. So he didn't lose that title in the ring. And the one loss he had to Max Schmeling, as I said, in 1938, just beat the holy bejesus out of Max Schmeling to where Max Schmeling was screaming bloody murder when he was getting hit. That should tell you what type of a menace in that ring Joe Louis was. And you talk about the Mount Rushmore of boxing, the premier pound-for-pound fighters of all time. I have this guy number 3 behind Ray Robinson and Muhammad Ali. I have number 2 behind Muhammad Ali. And I've said this all along. Muhammad Ali's number 1. Joe Louis is number 2. But the gap from Ali to Louis is as great. But the gap from Louis to the rest of the heavyweight division field of all time may be greater because of the gold standard that still is established 80 plus years later today that Joe Louis set. We talk about what he did to guys like Max Schmeling and, of course, 84 years ago tonight at Madison Square Garden to Buddy Baer. And we're not going to see anything like it. Yes, you got fighters going to defend their titles because we use the word title in today's fight game too loosely. We have so many fake champions and so many fake championships. But real championships, one belt, where one belt was winner take all, doing it in one weight class. If I was saying clean out the era twice, not once, but twice, and how Joe Louis just ruled the roost from 1937 to 1949 in one weight class. This is one weight class. We're not going to see anything like that again until someone goes 12 years, 25 successful title defenses in one weight class. Because everybody thinks moving up weight classes give you a greater legacy and a greater place in history. Not as much as you think, because it's so easy to do these days. But back then, you're in one weight class and you can rule the roost for 12 years. That alone sets a standard, and that sets the standard. We look at it, I'm not sure you can see it. That's why I call his record the most unbreakable record in boxing history, just because he did it with one belt when it meant everything and in one weight class. Not picking up fake championships in multiple weight classes where everybody can do it. One belt, one era, one weight class, clean it all out. That's what Joe Louis did. And his upper echelon place in history, secure. And how he just wiped out and beat up Buddy Baer 84 years ago tonight at Madison Square Garden. Pretty much the epitome of what Joe Louis was in that ring. And this was not the stature of the Max Schmeling rematch for many reasons. But given what happened after the first fight between Joe Louis and Buddy Baer, when Buddy Baer came into this fight, having some confidence, Joe Louis said, "The heck with it. I'm getting this guy out of here." And he probably beat Baer just as bad as he beat Max Schmeling in that rematch. And we know how bad he beat up Max Schmeling. And this was not far behind it. Because you give Joe Louis a second chance at something like this, he's going to basically take you to the cleaners. And not only did he beat Buddy Baer bad, he beat Buddy Baer bad so bad that A, he did it for free because he donated his purse, and he punched Buddy Baer into retirement. Am I just the same Buddy Baer who's the brother of Max Baer? And we know Max Baer was the one who was a victim of the greatest upset in boxing history when we lost to James J. Braddock before Buddy Baer came on. And Buddy Baer just became a victim. And because it was so bad, Buddy Baer checked out. That's what Joe Louis did to fighters back in the 1930s and 1940s. 12 years, 25 successful title defenses with only one belt. And that one belt meant everything. And as I said, you can move up and down and collect belts in today's boxing world. I get it. But we talk about one division and one belt and just cleaning out 12 years of your career. That's a greater legacy. And we're not going to see anything remotely close to it ever again. No way. That's why Joe Louis, for the longest time, before Robinson and Muhammad Ali came around, had that real distinction of the GOAT, and it was well-deserved. Some people put Joe Louis number one all time because of it. I won't argue it because 12 years, 25 successful title defenses, you did something right in one weight class. That should tell you the legacy and the greatness, the pure, genuine, beautiful greatness of Joe Louis. And the footage is out there. He was a beauty to watch. And when that right cross lands on you, especially the one that landed on Max Schmeling that put that fight away, turn off the lights and hit the sack because the party is over. That's what Joe Louis did for the better half of that 12-year career. And ended Buddy Baer's career in one round, basically for free, because whatever he collected, he donated to the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Naval Military Corps Relief. That should tell you something about Joe Louis at the end of the day. And yes, there's that the other angle, which I won't talk about because I don't use my platform for political aspects. You guys can use yours, and I understand what it is all about, especially the circumstances of the Max Schmeling fight. But people need to start giving Joe Louis. I know we're way past his time on this earth. I mean, he passed, I think, in the early 80s. I can't remember when. Might be time to give this guy the recognition that he's earned, not just in the ring, but more importantly outside of it, because he earned it. And the most importantly is he earned it the right way and took no shortcuts. We can't say that about much, athletes or much people in all walks of life. But Joe Louis needs to be given a higher praise than what's been given to him in and out of the ring. Because that's who he was. Not just a great fighter, but one of the great humanitarians to have ever walked and lived on this planet. May God rest the soul of this great Joe Louis. One of a kind. And on that note, that'll wrap up tonight's edition of All Era Sports with Sirhan. No show the rest of the week. I will be back after the weekend. As always, if you missed this show or any of the other ones, this will pop up along with the older shows I had in the past on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Patreon site will be launched later tonight or tomorrow. And as always, I tell this to everybody, Make self-care your number one priority in every walks of life. Always take care of yourself first. Always respect other people's boundaries, and always stand up for your own boundaries. And don't let anyone step on you, and all the good things would happen. Boundaries is always important in self-care, because if you disrespect others and can't protect yours from being stomped on yourself, nothing else is going to matter. That's part of self-care. It is important to you. And on that note, that'll wrap up this show. That'll wrap up this series for the week. I will be back after the weekend. Take care of yourselves. Good night, and enjoy the rest of the week.